My name is Talamini and I am the CEO and founder of Fuelicious, the protein bakery with low sugar, ketogenic, and high protein in each and every item. I specialize in making brownies, cookies, and cupcakes. And as of 2021, we will have the variety of traditional, gluten-free, and protein to choose from of every product. Come check us out at www.fueliciousbakery.com, and then also check us out on our donation button where all proceedings will go to the wheelchair bodybuilding community with your order. Thank you for checking us out. Take care.
If it's been 3.5 hours since you last ate protein, and now you're starting to freak out, you are old school. If watching someone sit on a hammer machine for 5 minutes between sets playing with their phone pisses you off, you are definitely old school. OSBBC.com for the hardest training athletes.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body, and that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, news. There was some big news last night. Whatever's on your mind, it is all on the table. Dave, before we get to that big news, hard to believe. I know it's kind of like coming from out of nowhere, but July 4th weekend is right around the corner. It's here. And Species Nutrition is going to ring in the July 4th weekend in a big way. If you want to give the viewers a primer of what they expect at speciesnutrition.com for our July 4th sale.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what the sale is, but I will tell you this. We're going to have a sale. It's going to be Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You guys are going to be able to get some really nice discounts on the site. Stay tuned. I don't want to tell you that because then everyone's going to go to the site and say, how come the sale's not up? Well, it's only Wednesday, so check this weekend. There will be a sale. I know a lot of people need to restock for the month or for the next 2 months, and they've been asking me, hey, you're going to have a sale July 4th? We will have a sale. I promise you it'll be a really nice one. And just stay tuned this weekend. It'll be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and then that'll be it. So make sure you check this weekend on the site. And look, I can't believe July 4th is here already. It did come very, very fast. And I was planning my guru course. I wanted to do it before the July 4th weekend. Then July 4th obviously came up before I knew it. Next week after July 4th, the following Saturday, will be the diet or the secrets to becoming a diet guru course online. You can sign up via the link on my website. And I know a lot of people have been asking about it because they want to get into taking the course and obviously educate themselves. And I have a lot of people, Sid, who actually take the course multiple times. You got to remember, when you are a coach and you're making money off of helping other people and charging them, you have a lot. You can write expenses off, and continuing education is an expense you can write off with your accountant at the end of the year. So I have guys that every single year they take it once a year, the secrets to becoming a diet guru, and then they just submit it to their accountants and they get the discount. Obviously they get that taken off their taxes. So it's free education in a sense. Take advantage of it. I spend a lot of time. It's a very long day. It's 9 hours, but it's a lot of great information.
So before we get into the questions, again, we talked about that big news. Well, the big news announced yesterday from the Arnold Classic Committee is that this upcoming Arnold Classic is going to have two big new names. That is Nick Walker and Ruli Winkler. They're added to quite possibly the most stacked competition in this stacked lineup rather in this competition's history, Dave.
Yeah.
So some big news we had discussed with Sergio Oliva Jr. just a couple of weeks ago on Heavy Muscle Radio, and that is that bodybuilding needs more of this, more of these mega shows, these blockbuster shows aside from the Olympia. Then you talked about Akeem Williams, his plans after his big win at the Puerto Rico Pro. He too is going to compete there. So that's going to shape up to be a blockbuster show at the Arnold.
Do you think that that Sergio's little message he did on Instagram influenced these other guys and made them jump into the show? Or do you think they just realized, hey, how stupid am I? I got a month before the Olympia. I can jump in and make some prize money here. I'm trying to think of if he motivated them or brought them to, to their senses, or if they just said, why not,
I'm going to say it's a combination of both. And I'll tell you one thing that Sergio said on the episode that I think really kind of, triggered something. And it started a good conversation. And here we go. The end result, if that had anything to do with it, is that you're going to have a blockbuster show in Columbus this year. And that is, he said, look, you look past over the last 18 months, right, aside from the Olympia, aside from Big Ramy winning the Olympia, what could you say is like the most talked about storyline? And it's a manufactured storyline, right? It was the quote unquote beef between Nick Walker and Blessing Awodibu that never quite panned out, that I guess, whatever. But to his point, the fact that bodybuilding was essentially leaning on that as a real highlight of the year, kind of a talking point, that kind of goes to show, like, you need this. You need mega shows. You need, aside from the Olympia, you need a mega show where you have some of the bodybuilding's, up-and-coming stars, stars that you would expect to be in that top 6 in the Olympia. And I think that, message really was received in a resounding fashion. So whether or not that had anything to do with it, I'm sure history will tell. But nonetheless, the bottom line, you're going to have an absolute gem of a show September 25th.
And here's another thing that people didn't really think about either is that, the Arnold this year will be a qualifier for the next year's Olympia. So, hey, if guys are going to do the Olympia in October, they're ready early, let me jump in, let me make some money, and then I'll qualify for next year's Olympia without even having to do a show if I don't want to next year. And where better to qualify than at an Arnold, and you're going to be in shape anyway for the Olympia. So I think it's a no-brainer. Too bad Hadi Choopan couldn't get into that show as well. I think that would have been a blockbuster,
No, you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, because after the announcement, that was going to be my next move, to message Hani Rambot to see if that was a possibility. But I do know that obviously the plan is for Hadi Choopan to come way earlier than the Olympia, to start, very, very deep prep here in the United States, not have to deal with any of the travel issues. So, we hope to see the best Hadi Choopan come Olympia time. Let's go to the questions. The first two questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first question, Dave, can you discuss the synergy with GH and IGF-1 together, dosage, timing, etc.? Thanks for the brutal show.
It's funny because I used to, when I would compete back in the day, I was doing off season. A lot of times when I would do my IGF, I didn't even use GH. I said, you know what? I'll take a break from the GH. I'll use my IGF-1 with insulin, and then I would do the GH with insulin when I wasn't using the IGF, because I would go off the IGF for a couple weeks here and there, because I found that my body got used to it a lot. But then the research came out and showed that there is a synergism between using the growth hormone and IGF together. So what I have a lot of guys do is use, depending on whatever dosage or the weight of the person or what their experience levels, figure about 2 to 4. I use a GH a day, and then 10 to 20 micrograms of IGF-1 post-workout. And the IGF-1 is always rotated on a 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off rotation. The key with IGF-1, and people just don't realize this because it's cheap and it's available, is you can't do too much of it, okay? More is not better, like with GH, to a certain degree, of course. Because what happens is your IGF-1 receptors downgrade very quickly to IGF-1. So if you're taking 50 to 100 micrograms a day, the stuff's going to stop working after a week. Trust me. I know so many people that take huge, massive doses of IGF-1 and get no gains from it. You get a pump from it because it has an insulin-like effect, but they don't get gains because their IGF-1 receptors are just not receptive anymore. If you do less is more. So 10, 20 micrograms the most per day, and only do it for 4 weeks in a row, and then take at least 2 weeks off before you restart it up again. If you do that, you're going to get better results. And I know it sounds counterproductive because we're so enraptured in this more is better culture. But when it comes to IGF-1, you can't do too much of it. It just doesn't work that way.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, you've always liked long-acting compounds. Why pre-contests are better use short like tren acetate and masteron?
Well, the reason I like tren acetate is because it seems to work a little differently than the long-acting trenbolone metabolites. Long-acting trenbolone esters. I don't know why, but for some reason tren acetate has a very, very quick hardening effect. And I like that pre-contest. I don't really like the side effects of it. I always had trouble sleeping on it at night. I can never fall asleep. I was always having to take like something to go to bed at night. The last 4 to 6 weeks, whenever I used it, it puts you in a really crappy mood. Some people have digestive issues from it, and if you take too much of it, it'll definitely jack your blood pressure up very high. So I recommend less is better. Also with tren acetate, 50 milligrams every other day is plenty. Okay, I used to do 100 with people. And people had a lot of side effects with it. It's just not worth it. You don't really need that much of it. When it comes to the other and of course I like Winstrol pre-contest the last 6 weeks or so like that, because I just think that it has some sort of a hardening effect on the body. But as far as testosterone goes, I like the long-acting esters because testosterone is testosterone. Okay, we want high, even levels in the body. It doesn't matter if you're using a fast or slow-acting testosterone. The end result is the same. The only difference is you got to administer the fast-acting one more frequently, and no one uses test suspension anymore, which is the fastest acting, because it hurts too much and it leaves you welted up. But same thing with test propionate. Propionate lasts about 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours in the body, at a nice level. But the problem is it feels like you got hit with a hammer wherever you take a shot of this stuff. And a lot of people have like an immune system response to it. I know I used to. You get like flu-like symptoms from it. So it's just not worth taking because it doesn't make you feel good. And you don't need to have welts all over your body from injections. So I find that cypionate and enanthate esters of testosterone seem to be the most reliable. You get the same results. There's no toxicity from it. They give you nice even levels of it. And then play around with the anabolics. When you get close to the show, if you want to use faster acting anabolics, that's fine. I don't really cut testosterone out on my athletes at all. I've always found that whenever I cut testosterone, I kind of lost some of the fullness that I wanted on stage. I might have them take their last shot Wednesday before a Saturday show, but by and far I keep that in at a high level. I play with the anabolics a lot in terms of like masteron, tren acetate, Winstrol. Those are my favorites those last 6 to 8 weeks. Prior to that, the first 8 weeks of the diet, I usually use longer acting esters like Decker and Equipoise and testosterone. So it's really only those last 8 weeks that things start to change around. And the truth of the matter is, I know guys that have looked amazing on stage. And when I asked them after the show, what did you use? Well, I took testosterone, nothing else. I couldn't afford anything. I couldn't get anything else. And it just goes to show you. A lot of times we think you have to have the perfect drug concoction and cocktail to be the best on stage. A lot of times it doesn't matter. It's about diet, training, getting your body fat low, and just having something on board, some anabolic on board to keep you full and preserve your muscle. And at the end of the day, having 1 million compounds and the perfect drug cycle might improve you a little bit, but maybe not as much as people think.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us on Instagram, the handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us for the first time on YouTube, hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell. Obviously, now that we have our build up to the Arnold Classic and then ultimately the Olympia, we're going to be doing all sorts of contest coverage, Iron Debate episodes, interviews with the athletes are going to be on stage, preview segments, a lot more. So if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our show segments or updates. A little clogged up right now, if you can't already tell, but appreciate your patience.
No COVID.
No COVID, no. First question from Neil Zalewski. So we talked about, I guess, contests having more of the stars compete at contests aside from the Olympia. And this has been a much debated topic over the last few years. So he asks, do you think the IFBB should change the rule about the top 5 in open automatically qualifying for the Olympia to just the top 2 to make an effort for top pros to compete more often than once a year?
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem if only the Olympia champ requalified. I mean, why not? Make everyone compete. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I think that it's a shame that these guys don't want to compete, more than once a year. I'm actually really glad to see that pretty much everyone is jumping into this Arnold a month before. That just goes to show you that, the stereotype of everyone just sitting back and waiting for one show to compete at is not necessarily true anymore. And so, should they make these guys re-qualify? You know what? If you place top 5 at the Olympia, you're at the elite level. You really shouldn't have to. But at the same time, should you compete if you are top 5? Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea, especially if there's a couple shows close to the Olympia like they're doing the Arnold this year. Maybe now that they're going to have the Arnold UK, maybe that'll stay later in the year right before the Olympia. Maybe you'll have guys do the Arnold in March, and then right before the Olympia, there'll be the Arnold UK. Guys from the US will fly over and do that, and then you'll have the Arnold Classic. And then, then you'll have the Olympia right after that. If that becomes something that happens every year, that could inspire a lot of people to do that show, because maybe that show will have more prize money. Then, of course, if The Rock ever comes out with his Athleticon, I don't know what his plans are for that, and they put up a lot of prize money, I think the top guys will do the shows or do more shows if we have the top level prize money at these shows. I understand what they're thinking. If I'm a second or third at the Olympia and I'm only going to make $5,000 from winning this show, why should I risk peaking twice? But if there's $100,000 on the line, you're going to be much more likely to see a guy jump into a show.
It's questions from Tony Wynn. So after we record this show, you're going to be on with Lee Priest, and the question is about Lee. Can you, in your honest opinion, can you see Lee Priest really doing another show? He looks huge still, and as one of his many fans, it would be great to see him get an invite to a major show. I mean, he goes on to say, I guess, to see some of the other 90 stars would be great. But Lee, in particular, realistically, obviously, you've formed a really tight relationship with him. You know his habits. You know his training style, his training regimen. Mm-hmm. Now, can you honestly, realistically see him step back on an IFBB stage?
I know for a fact that Lee definitely wants to compete. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, we've talked about this before. He definitely wants to compete. I don't think Lee will get on stage unless he thinks he can be competitive where he's going to win a show. In other words, he's not. If his injury doesn't completely get to a point where he's happy with the way he looks, I don't think he'll get on the stage. He's not going to just get on the stage and say, I did it. He's going there to win, and that's Lee's mindset. And I think it's a good mindset. In other words, I always felt the same way. If I couldn't be better than I was before, then why compete? So same thing for Lee. I mean, Lee's a guy who's won, pretty almost every show aside from, the big Arnold and the Olympia. So why risk, ruining your legacy if you're going to come back at half your best? So if he can come back and be competitive and he knows, in that 212 class or open, whatever he decides to do, I could possibly win this show, place top 5, whatever his goals are, I think he'll definitely do it. And I think we'll see him in 2022. We're not going to see him this year, but I think in 2022 he's going to be ready to roll.
Let's go to DE Min. What is the science theory behind taking Humalin R with your morning GH dose?
We all know that growth hormone works antagonistically. That means the opposite of insulin, essentially. So GH mobilizes, moves stuff out of the cells. That's why you burn fat. Whereas insulin drives stuff into the cell to be absorbed and utilized, whatever. If it's not a muscle cell it's driven into a fat cell, it can store things as fat. Okay, so when you have a lot of GH around and you're eating, meals like you do when you're awake, especially in the morning, your first meal of the day, if there's too much GH around, the insulin can't do its job pushing stuff into the muscles because the growth hormone's in the way. It's a very big molecule, and the insulin doesn't do its job. So you could be running higher blood sugars than normal. And if you're not absorbing all these nutrients that you're consuming, then obviously you're not going to grow and recover well. So for some people, when they take growth hormone, they become very insulin resistant. Sometimes they run high blood sugars. Just because you're insulin resistant doesn't mean you're going to run high blood sugars. But sometimes people have both, and in which cases they're not really utilizing the nutrients that they're consuming properly. And in those situations, when you add something like Humalin R or Humalog in the morning to kind of give your body the ability to overcome the insulin resistance from the GH, you seem to grow better. Now, if you're a person who tends to over-secrete insulin already, that means you have fat genes, we say, you get fat easily, and you add insulin into the equation, it can make the situation worse. But in a lot of people like myself who are very low insulin, people who put out very low amounts of insulin because our bodies are efficient at absorbing. When I would take GH, I couldn't absorb any food. I would be flat as a pancake. It made me very insulin resistant. So when I added in, a short-acting insulin, I started to grow, pretty noticeably, pretty quickly. So you have to assess it on a person-by-person basis. Not everyone's the same.
Let's go to IFBB tenacity. How do I kickstart my metabolism again after 5 surgeries in 2 years and being unable to train effectively? Not yet able to fully train, but we'll be able to do so in the next 3-4 months. So given that, your methodologies for restarting the metabolism.
I think the metabolism will restart on its own once he starts working out and increasing his food intake, to several meals per day, spaced out throughout the day. The body is a wonderful machine. It really knows what to do when you put the right inputs into it. So if you go from doing no training because you were injured and you weren't maybe eating as you should have because you figured, wow, why should I eat 6 times a day? I'm not able to train. Now when you go into that eating regimen and you go into that training regimen that you weren't doing, your body's just going to respond. You're going to create a positive nutrient partitioning environment. Your body's going to start building muscle using stored body fat as a fuel source, and you're going to see everything change. And your metabolism, you're going to be sweating all the time from eating more food, and your body's going to start doing. You don't really have to do anything. The body's a very, very smart, organic machine, as I like to say, and it knows what to do.
Let's go. Let's go to Severino Bambino. Thoughts on different training methods in a month. Example, different rep range every other workout, 6 to 8 reps to say 30 plus reps to hit different fibers.
I always say that there's no such thing as a bad training regimen. It's just a training regimen that either works or doesn't work for the person's body. I know that high rep, a lot of sets, workouts that required me to stay in the gym for long periods of time were counterproductive for my body. So if I were to do a 2.5-hour workout, and do, 35, 40 sets, I probably would lose muscle rather than gain muscle. That's the way my body worked. So for me to just, because I want to do something different than I normally do, to change from low volume, heavy weight to super high volume, long workouts, that would be counterproductive. However, if I'm stale on what I'm doing, and I don't want to go into the gym and squat 600 pounds today because I just don't feel as strong, I might go in and do 425 with a couple of drop sets to kind of increase the intensity level, but not necessarily do more sets. Just enhance what I'm doing using lighter weights. And I don't know if that makes sense to people, but so basically you're changing the tempo of your workout, you're changing how you're creating the stress in your body, but I'm not necessarily increasing volume as much or time in the gym. And that's what you need to do. I always tell people, like, how do I change my work? Well, you know what? If you squat, go squat. Do something different. Maybe squat and superset that with leg extensions. Or if you do bench pressing normally, maybe do a giant set. Do a set of incline barbell presses, go to flat dumbbell presses, and then go to cable crossovers in a giant set like Milos would do. You don't do it every time, but if you go into the gym and you do it, once a month or something like that, or once every 6 weeks, it'll shock your body a little bit. Still doing the same number of sets, you're just doing them boom, 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 boom. So you might do 3 sets, 3 giant sets like that, and leave the gym. So your workout might even be shorter than it normally is, but the intensity and the way you distribute the intensity to your body or the stress to your body during this workout is a little different. So it has a shocking effect on the body. And the body has to adapt to that. And that's what it's all about. We want the body to have to adapt to what we do in the gym. And if you're stale on what you're doing in the gym because you're doing the same thing every week, this is a good way to get past that.
Let's go to the Leopard. How do you feel about low insulin and GH in test for off-season bulking combined with high calories versus a combination of multiple anabolics?
One more time, Sid.
So how do you feel about low insulin, GH in test for off-season bulking combined with high calories versus a combination of multiple anabolic compounds?
So in other words, I think he's trying to imply that when you're off cycle, you would still do insulin and GH or something like that. I mean, I think
that's what it sounds like. Yeah. It's kind of vague.
I mean, I don't have a problem with insulin and GH as long as you're giving your body some time off the anabolics, because the androgen receptors need to regenerate. It's the anabolics that are, gunking them up, so to speak. Think about it. If your body's always exposed to high levels of testosterone or any kind of anabolic steroid for that matter, it doesn't matter. We're just using testosterone. For instance, the androgen receptor is not going to be as receptive. It's going to say, there's plenty of testosterone. We don't need that many receptors. We don't want to be overwhelmed. But if you take away the testosterone, you take away the androgens, now there's very little around, only naturally what your body is producing, and your body might be producing very little. The sensitivity of the androgen receptor must restore itself. Now, whether you're taking insulin and GH at the same time, okay, it's going to have nothing to do with that androgen receptor. So sure, you could take some low dose GH and a little bit of insulin and still, get some anabolic response from it without affecting how your androgen receptor recovers.
Let's go to Irish with little marinara. How do you feel about mixing whey isolate powder and cream of rice? It seems to be the new thing.
We used to mix whey isolate in oatmeal all the time. I used to do that back in the day. And I would do it and sit in front of the TV. And it was just, I'd make my oatmeal and then I would take a scoop of whey isolate, mix it in, and it was a good way to add some extra protein. They even sell oatmeal packets with whey isolate in there already, and to flavor it. So, the only thing is, and same thing with cream, you can do a cream of rice, doesn't matter. What I notice is it could get a slight clay-like consistency because the whey protein, it's almost like plaster. It gets a little thick. You might have to add some extra water to it. I always preferred that, if I didn't feel like eating protein, like I didn't want to make a chicken breast, I would just rather mix 50 grams of whey into this much water, mix it around, gulp it down, and then eat the bowl of oatmeal separately. But if you like the way the taste of this stuff mixed in, that's fine. You can do it that way. What I used to do, and I still sometimes do it, cream of rice, grits, or oatmeal, put your eggs in there. So let's say you eat 4 whole eggs in the morning and 2 whites or something like that, just for instance. You could put that into your dry oatmeal, mix it around, add a little bit of water just to get the right consistency, put that in the microwave. The microwave will absorb, whether the grits or the cream of rice or the oatmeal will absorb those eggs, and it almost makes, and I've showed this video, I've done videos on this before, it makes almost like a little cake, and you can I used to sit there and eat that. That tastes way better, I think, than putting the whey protein in there. Eggs into the oatmeal or eggs into the cream of rice seems to be better to me than mixing whey protein.
Take 2-3 more questions. What muscle, in your opinion, is key to having great looking arms? From the last week, we asked you about at your peak, how big your biceps got. Delts, triceps, biceps, or forearms, in your opinion, what makes the arms?
Say that one more time. I just missed the beginning of what you said.
Yeah, no. What muscle, in your opinion, is key to having great looking arms? Delts, triceps, biceps, forearms.
Yeah. Everyone thinks of arms of biceps and triceps, right? And if you look at Ronnie Coleman's arm, I don't know if Tyler can pull up a picture of Ronnie hitting a pose like this, or even Flex Wheeler's arm. The muscle, and I'm not big anymore by any means, but if the muscle that sits between the tricep and the bicep right in here, which mine's not big anymore, that's called the brachialis muscle. Ronnie's is like this thick, and that's why his arm is pushed out this much. Brachialis is one of the most undertrained muscles, and the only way to really work it would be to do hammer curls. You could do them with a dumbbell, you could do them with a cable. I like to get the cable handle, and if here's your handle, I grab the material part with the handle on top, and I do hammer curls. And you know what, that really hits right in here, and that really jacks that brachialis up. And once again, the wider the brachialis gets, the thicker it gets, the bigger your arm gets. And you can build bigger arms by enhancing that brachialis muscle faster than you can by adding more tricep or adding more bicep to the arm. And I think a lot of guys are just missing. I need an outside view, Tyler, not an inside view of the arm. You got to show the outside. You can say, even if you have a side chest shot of Ronnie or something like that, you can do that too. That'll probably show it better. Or a back double bicep. That's what we need. But the point is that the guys with the best arms, look at Ruli Winkler. Ruli has a tremendous tricep, but Ronnie, there it is. If you see that, you see that peak bicep, but you can see that there's another muscle underneath the bicep. It looks like a second bicep almost in the middle, and that's your brachialis muscle. And a lot of people don't realize that's a good third to maybe more than a third of your arm mass. And you can't have good arms without having a well-developed brachialis muscle, and that's just the truth of the matter.
Let's go to AS Pipes. In your experience as a bodybuilder, and then I guess how you coach your clients through it, best way to get through post-show blues?
You got to have something that interests you other than bodybuilding, because you know what, it is a downer. It's like women who go through postpartum after the pregnancy. It's like or even like if you ever plan a wedding. The planning a wedding is like more fun than the wedding. The wedding, after the wedding's over, people do get bored. They wind up getting divorced after that. So you got to have something that interests you, because after the show, if you put everything into that show, and then after the show's over, you've lost your job, your girlfriend you broke up with because she was getting in the way of you getting ready for the show. Then the show's over, and now you got nothing. So you got to find balance and understand that there is life after the show. My friend Dave Watson, he worked for Firestone. He was like one of these top mechanics, and he would always quit his job and always tell the boss to go F himself, like 2-3 weeks before a show. And I think he did it purposely because he didn't want to be bothered like right before a show. And then he would, after the show was over, before I knew it, he had his job back. I'm like, you got your job? I thought you quit. He goes, yeah, we made up. And it's hard. It's very hard to focus because you don't care about anything right before a show. You remember Kai Green telling me, I said, Kai, why wouldn't you pay your phone bill? He's like, it's not that important. It wasn't a priority. Buying chicken breasts and all the stuff I needed for bodybuilding was the priority. I figured I don't need a phone. I just need to be able to go to the gym. So that's what happens. The problem is that when the show's over, everything's falling apart around you. So there is a way to balance everything so that you have your life in balance with the bodybuilding. So when the bodybuilding's over, you still have something to go back to. So if you have another interest, or you like to, whatever, I don't know, windsurf, or you like to draw, you like to write, you like to do videos for your YouTube channel, have something else that you can kind of immerse yourself in when the show is over. Otherwise, you will be depressed because there'll be nothing for you to look forward to, right? It's like, I have guys, I got them on an off-season program after the show's over. And then after 2-3 weeks, they're like, I'm just not happy. I got to go back to the contest diet. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm like, well, you're not going to make improvements if you don't do an off season. I can't handle it. I'm not ripped, because what's happening is their whole body, their whole personality is so invested in how they look now that they can't see themselves not looking like that, because then they think they're not going to get enough attention, and they can never go away from that. And that's a problem. It's a very real type of situation that people face who compete, that post-show depression. And the way you get past it is you find other things, and it doesn't have to necessarily, you don't have to go bird watching if you don't like bird watching. Find something you like to do. If you love bodybuilding, immerse yourself in your coaching, or work on your Instagram following, or work on a YouTube channel, or work on your own supplement line. Whatever you got to do, put yourself into that so that you can just put bodybuilding aside, in the sense that that's not the most important thing in your life.
Last question is from Joe to C880. A couple of days ago, Kai Green posted a progress picture of him, which was allegedly, Tyler, I sent you the picture if you're showing it right now, 317 pounds, of course. So here we go again. Everyone's speculating whether or not this is going to be the year that Kai Green steps back on stage, and seemingly we've gone through that every year. Kai likes to have fun with the fans. It's entertaining, but whether or not it's actually going to happen is yet to be seen. Question is, do you think we will ever see Kai Green or Shawn Rhoden compete at the Olympia again?
I think there's a way better chance of Shawn Rhoden being at the Olympia than Kai. Now, that's assuming that Shawn is, once the trial goes through, that he's cleared. He wants to compete. He desperately wants to compete. He misses it. That's his passion, So the fact that he's not being allowed to compete, and it's been, 3 years almost now? I mean, I feel bad for the guy. Now, if he did the crime, he deserves to go to jail, obviously, and he will if that's the case, if he's found guilty. However, at this point, it's taken so long, I would almost, I almost think that they should just let the guy compete already, you know what I mean? Because I don't know why this case has taken so long. I hope it's, this is the last year that he has to deal with it, and he's going to get through it, and he'll be on stage again if he doesn't go to jail. Kai, on the other hand, I think, like you said earlier, is playing the fans, so to speak. He's teasing us a little bit. He wants to keep us interested in what he's doing, because that's how he's making money now, and I don't blame him. That's a good marketing move on his part. I don't think he has any desire to compete. If he did, he would have competed the year Brandon Curry won the Olympia, because I think that would have been his best chance to win it. Now that Rami's in there, I don't know if he can beat Rami, and Rami is bigger than Kai. He has, he's younger than Kai. He's got more bells and whistles at this point. So I don't know if maybe Kai does want to go against someone who's as good as Ramy. Maybe he figures maybe he was waiting for someone to come back that was worthy of beating. I don't know, or competing against. I don't think we're going to see Kai on stage anymore.
Well, let me throw in this wrinkle, Dave. Obviously now, I mean, as opposed to the year that Brandon Curry won the Olympia, now Kai has Redcon 1 as his sponsor. Would that not be, I'm not to say that Redcon 1 would in any way, again, I don't know what the contractual deal is or anything like that, but do you think that might play a factor in it as far as him now having that sponsor and maybe that being part of the, agreement?
I don't think Kai would have signed a contract that made him have to compete. I think he would have said no to that. I think Kai has enough clout now in the industry that he can kind of set up his contracts the way he wants him. I think he would set up a contract based on his own terms. In other words, if I want to compete, I'll compete. But I don't want to be forced to compete, and I don't think he would sign a contract that would force him to compete. He might be contractually obliged to tease people that he might compete, but I don't think he's actually got that in his contract. Now, we never know. Kai could wake up tomorrow and he could say, you know what? I feel like competing again. I'm going to do it. It would have been nice to see him, maybe jump into the Arnold or something like that. Would have been great. But who knows? I just don't think Kai wants it anymore. I think he kind of lost that eye of the tiger. I think he loves being big. I think he likes going around and posing and doing his little appearances and doing his Instagram posts and doing his creative YouTube stuff. But I don't think he has that same fire in him to do the Olympia anymore. Because if he did, he would do it, at this point. It's not like he has nothing else going on. It's not like the guy has got, he's filming, movies with The Rock or anything like that. So there's no reason for him not to do it if he wanted to. I just don't think he wants to.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave. Dave's going to have Lee Priest next, so you're going to have that on the channel by tomorrow. Already have episode of Heavy Muscle Radio with the live appearance from Akeem Williams, and then yesterday's episode of the After Hours podcast. For Tyler Short, Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Baruki. We'll see you next time.